In those years, buses used for public transport were often built on truck chassis. Examples include the ZS-8 and ZIS-16, as well as the GAZI-030. Although they had passenger bodies, they were essentially still trucks, resulting in a cramped interior and a tight layout. Consequently, the usable space was no more than 75% of the total. Low-powered engines and inefficient brakes with a mechanical drive didn't allow for the rapid acceleration and braking needed for city traffic. On top of that, the stiff truck suspension, designed to carry heavy loads, was completely unsuitable for passengers. By the late 1930s, the need for a fundamentally new design and concept for a city bus was becoming apparent. At the end of 1938, the Scientific Research Automotive and Tractor Institute, NATI, built a prototype of such a bus, the NATI-A. It featured an all-metal monocoque body, a new six-cylinder overhead valve MB-27 engine producing 155 horsepower located at the rear of the vehicle, mounted transversely, and pneumatic brakes. The advantages of this new concept were undeniable, but further development was interrupted by the war. The first Soviet mass-produced bus with a forward control layout, cab-over, an all-metal monocoque body, and a diesel engine with a stepless electromechanical transmission was the ZIS-154. The creation of the ZIS-154 was a huge leap forward, but the bus's fate wasn't very successful. The design of the new vehicle began in March 1946. In May, a special bus design bureau was organized. The main prototypes used as inspiration were contemporary American buses, the GMC with a hydraulic transmission and the Mack with an electric one. ZS had no experience in creating load-bearing all-metal bodies from aluminum alloys, so specialists from the aviation industry were brought in to work on the project at the Stupino plant. The construction used pressed aluminum profiles and steel frames. The body was designed for mass transit with a depreciation period of 8 to 10 years. Many components were standardized with another new product from the factory, the ZIS-150 truck, including the main elements of the front and rear axles, the drive shaft, leaf springs, steering, climate control system, and brakes. The most important feature of the ZIS-154 bus was its automatic stepless electromechanical transmission, which had never been used in Soviet bus manufacturing before. It made driving incredibly easier and gave the bus a previously unheard-of smooth ride. It's important to note that such a design was very complex to produce, especially at that time, so this decision can be seen as a very bold step forward. The ZIS-154 was the first to use some devices that later became widespread. Hydraulic shock absorbers for the front suspension, automatically controlled radiator shutters, a radiator expansion tank, and an engine overheat warning signal. It was decided to use a two-stroke, four-cylinder YAZ-204 diesel engine producing 110 horsepower, modeled after the American GMC 471. Since the Yaroslavl plant was only just preparing for the production of this engine, the first 75 buses were fitted with GMC diesel engines. Work on the new vehicle was carried out at a rapid pace, and the first bus was assembled on December 8, 1946. On July 8, 1947, 6 prototypes were put into service on the Revolution Square, Belaruski railway station route. Muscovites perceived the first vehicles as a marvel. Beautiful on the outside, very comfortable and convenient inside. The seats in the initial buses were upholstered in gray plush. Each bus was also equipped with another marvel, a vacuum cleaner, and conductors were responsible for thoroughly cleaning the interior. The previously unheard-of smooth ride and effective brakes changed the nature of bus travel, and passengers began to feel like they were moving very quickly. Another advantage of the ZIS-154 was the fully functional heating system for the passenger compartment in winter. And in the summer, passengers, especially those who got window seats, could take advantage of another design feature. They could raise the window glass all the way up and enjoy the breeze. The bus was very bright, 16 ceiling lights in the passenger compartment, 1 in the driver's cabin, and 2 lights illuminating the steps. In addition, 2 lamps lit the engine compartment. Since the rear doors were not in the driver's field of vision, they were monitored by a warning light located on the instrument panel. When the doors were fully closed, the light went out. Besides this, as stated in the ZIS-154 operating manual, an experienced driver could additionally monitor the closing of the rear doors by the characteristic sound made by the doors. From the end of 1947, the bus was produced in small series, maintaining contact with the operating personnel. Identified shortcomings were addressed immediately during the production process. In 1949, state tests were conducted, and based on their results, the State Commission recommended the ZIS-154 for mass production. By October 1, 1949, 817 buses were operating in 64 cities across the country and abroad. And here we come to a surprising fact in the ZIS-154's history. A year after the successful state tests, the bus was taken out of production. What was the reason? The extremely tight production preparation deadlines inevitably affected the quality and reliability of the design. The ZIS-204 diesel engine performed very poorly, and the refinement of its clearly underdeveloped design was significantly delayed by the Yaroslavl plant. The Yaroslavl diesel engine simply didn't want to work properly. Piston ring failures, piston burn-throughs, injector breakages, and cracks in the cylinder heads were common. The engine was also very noisy, didn't like idling, and produced terrible amounts of smoke. Unfortunately, the smoke also became a characteristic feature of the ZIS-154. Eyewitnesses recalled curious incidents related to this. On Gorky Street, for example, a bus pulling away from a traffic light in an instant turned a traffic controller's dazzling white tunic radically black. And there was also a place in Moscow where dissatisfaction with the hellish machine was widespread, on Suvorov Boulevard, on the uphill stretch from the Nikitsky gates. The diesel buses would climb slowly, grumbling and spewing black smoke so much that passers-by would surprisingly find their clothes turning black right before their eyes. Ladies in summer dresses were particularly unhappy. Complaints flooded the Moscow City Council, and the city authorities took action, fining the director of the bus depot. The Yaroslavl diesel engine had another very unpleasant feature. It sometimes went into runaway mode. There were various reasons for this. Firstly, due to the unreliable design of the seals, oil would sometimes leak, get picked up by the intake air, and enter the combustion chamber, after which the diesel engine would start running on oil. Secondly, the racks controlling the fuel supply to the injector pumps could seize. Incorrect injector adjustment and the engine's fondness for idling also contributed to the rapid wear and tear of the pistons. The engine's tendency to idle resulted in the injectors becoming coked up, and when the driver then accelerated, the pressure would rise sharply and break them. All these problems combined, as well as the high production cost of the vehicle and the complexity of its maintenance and repair, caused serious complaints about the ZIS-154. The city authorities began transferring the buses to the outskirts and suburban routes, while the factory tried to salvage the situation. Initially, they tried to replace the Yaroslavl diesel engine with a paired installation of standard ZIS-120 gasoline engines, building an opposed 12-cylinder unit with 180 horsepower based on them. Then, they tried to adapt a modified engine from the ZIS-110 limousine, producing 105 horsepower, installing it in a series of buses designated as the ZIS-154A. About 25 such vehicles were built, but the passenger car engine was not designed for continuous operation under heavy load, consumed a lot of expensive gasoline, and broke down quickly. The Yaroslavl plant could not offer anything better than its ZIS-204 diesel engine, and there were simply no other suitable engines available. As a result, The ZIS-154 was taken out of production in 1950, giving way to the simpler and cheaper ZIS-155 with a 5-speed manual transmission and the main components from the ZIS-150 truck chassis. Interestingly, about 8 years later, when the Yaroslavl plant finally perfected its diesel engines, some bus depots began looking for surviving ZIS-154s, installing a 6-cylinder YAZ 206 engine producing 165 horsepower in them and operating these vehicles quite successfully. They produced less smoke than before, consumed less fuel, and were more dynamic and reliable in operation. This example eloquently shows once again that the ZIS-154 bus was ahead of its time. A total of 1,165 vehicles were made, of which only a handful have survived to this day.